Welcome to the Daily Influence, where our mission is to deliver a daily dose of positive influence that can uplift you personally or be shared within your sphere of influence. While not every episode may directly apply to your unique circumstances, we strive to provide insights and inspiration relevant to most people's daily, weekly, and monthly lives. Whether you are tuning in during the morning, noon, or night, the Daily Influence is here for you. Listen, share, and embrace the power of influence in your life.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Influence. I'm Greg Colino with the IN Team Series and IE Business Advisors, and today I am delighted to introduce you to our UK partner, Debbie Halls-Evans of and.scot. Debbie has had a huge positive influence on me and so many others around the globe. I am so grateful that she is here with us today to share her words of wisdom. Debbie, thank you for being here.
I am really delighted, and I'd say a very British thing. I'm stoked to be here. So this is awesome for me, and it's nice to be on the other side of a podcast. So I'm looking forward to our little chat.
Yes, and we will link to your podcast in our show notes for those that are interested. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. Debbie, can you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm based in the remote Scottish Highlands. So if you are watching this on the video and not just audio, you'll be able to see the greenery behind us. So, and one of the reasons why we live where we live is that we make intentional choices. And it's really important for us to live our values as one of my many roles is as a coach. So I coach people who are specifically maybe going through transitional changes, stuck, not sure. That's probably my niche, as you would say in America, or we say here niche. But I think that would be my biggest area of helping people get over that area, whether it's themselves or whether it's external or internal influences. So that's a little bit about me. Personally, I'm a mum of 5, blended family, 4 beautiful grand boys. My 6th child is my dog, and I work with my husband, Dave, who wears a kilt every day.
I can attest for that. I have met Dave in person, and I have also seen him online, and he does wear a kilt every day.
Every day, to the point of we even designed our own tartans. We now have our own historic Scotland tartan, which is linked to our house. Our house was built in the 1700s. So we, as a legacy for us and our children, is we now have our own tartan too.
That's very cool. I'd love to see that. So, Debbie, how do you maintain your own sense of positivity and motivation, especially during challenging times or if you're faced with negativity?
Great question. And I think what will surprise most people is by default, I'm a very negative person and I'm quite catastrophizing. Yes, I know you're surprised, but genuinely I am. And for lots of many reasons, my own personal past and the way that I've brought myself through life. But I think what I have to do, and I think this is really important, it's a constant work in progress. So I myself, I'm proactive about being intentional. It takes a lot of energy at times, but I also know that motivation is an active thing. So it's not just it's a given. For me, it's something that you choose to have or not have. And there are days, and I've talked to you at the beginning, there are days when I have my funk and I don't want to be in those moments. So I do step away. And I think that's really important. But there's a couple of other things that I do is I write a lot. And when I was in my very lowest kind of depressed stages and again, they ebb and flow like life, but I write a lot. And one of the things that helped me as a coach is that all of the techniques that we use are ones that we have developed through our own life experiences. It's really important. So there's a couple of things. I wrote myself a little book, and it was 31 days to get out my own way. And it was something I now share with my daughters, and my daughters use it. And I occasionally share it with clients. I will share it with you, Greg, personally. See what you think, and you might send it on. But it was a really great way for me to deal with that internal dialogue. And the other way that I really do it, and this is a universal tool that we've adapted, and it's called Format. And it was by a teacher called Bernice McCarthy. You can go and research it online, just Format as the words. But it's incredible, and it's built around 4 words: why, what, how, what, if. And I think as we've being very specific about how do you maintain positivity and motivate self, is you start with asking yourself, why do I feel like this? why am I in this funk? Why am I in this state? Then you ask, what is it that's creating that? So these are all internal questions that can happen very quickly as you practice the technique. How can I right now do something to help myself or others? Because we've got to remember, we can project negativity and it can cast a shadow. And then what if, the final question is what if I do and what if I don't? And remember, no action is still an action. So we've got to be cautious of that. So why am I here? What is it that I could do? How can I help myself or others? And what if? And those are the two key ways that when I'm in that downward spiral or when I really need to boost myself up, they're both really energizing for me. So a little bit of journaling and using format.
Those are beautiful tips and tools, and I'm excited. I just wrote them down. I'm excited
I will send it you.
to try them. And for those of you that are not watching on YouTube and you're listening on Apple or Spotify, you did not get to see my face when Debbie told me about her being a negative human, because I've never seen her that way. And so my jaw dropped. But Debbie, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the interview Renee did with me last week, but I used to be a very negative person too. And I've worked on myself a lot. And that tool, I wish I would have had years ago, would have helped me. But now I have it now to help get me out of those funks, because we're humans and our life's like a roller coaster and it ebbs and flows. And it's not how we deal with things in the high times, is how do we deal with them in the low times? And having tools like that is so valuable to help us, because no one can get us out of a funk. We have to pull ourselves out. And if we have a tool that we learn when we're not in a funk, and use it when we're in a funk. So thank you for sharing that. I am going to use it. We'll make sure it's in the show notes for everyone listening.
I can send you a little freebie. We've got like a little e-workbook. We call it a thought binder, but I'll send you that as well so you can drop in there. So it's just a little 4 pages, but it just teaches you the method so you can really apply it and build the skill, because it's really important. For us, it's, we work with the individual to benefit the many. And if we work on ourselves, which is a continuous work in progress, we're a very fine piece of art, but we're never finished, but like a Gaudi building. But in regards to it's just making sure that we have those tools. So yeah, I'm happily share anything.
Thank you so much. So listeners, we're getting lots of freebies today. So this is exciting. Thank you, Debbie, for that generous offer. Debbie, can you share any specific strategies or initiatives that you've implemented to promote positivity and make a lasting impact in your personal or professional circles?
Well, and both. So again, this is another technique for me that I created and I started sharing it with clients in COVID. So I think one of the things for me is really important is I'm very self-aware. So, and that's taken years, right? Years and years, decades even, to sit in that space and understand the things that are not particularly great about myself and the things that I'm really good at, that I can put positive energy into and influence. So I think the first thing to understand about that is you have to get to know yourself and all of self, the good and the bad and the indifferent. And even without labeling, I just label it as energies. So I might have a poor energy, low energy, but it's all energy, right? And all energy can be converted. And we've got to remember that's really important. And the other thing for me, which is a power tool in any situation, particularly when you're wanting to promote positivity for long-term effect, is language. How we choose to use our language is so important. And there's two sides to this. There's that internal language, the one that we are really quite horrible to ourselves a lot of the time. And I always remember, this is showing my age, but Ally McBeal, I don't know if you watched Ally McBeal, right? So Ally McBeal was one of my favorite programs. By the way, it doesn't translate very well in today's decades, but it was brilliant at the time. But the whole thing where you saw her inner workings and her brain and the baby, dancing baby and etc. And for me, that's really important because we all have those running stories. Like my husband always says, it's like, just because the TV is off, it's always broadcasting. And it's understanding that our brain is still doing that. So we could be having a conversation with somebody, a bit like you seeing me as not being a negative person by default. But what I'm doing is actively working on how I do that. So it's making sure that I present that. And there's loads of different things. A really funny one, just to make you laugh a little bit, is when my husband's got quite a serious face. We call him a bit of a gruffalo kind of face. So when the kids were growing up, they would think he was being really grumpy and quite angry, a bit Gordon Ramsay-esque, that kind of very frowny forehead. So Dave built a technique where he would see, he loves giraffes. So he would look at a giraffe behind the kid's head. So he was always in a space where, again, intentionally making sure that he was engaged with the children. But it's just funny in itself that it was a giraffe. And I think the other thing is about language is being in a place where you can deal with what you can deal with, right? So it's control what you can control. It's so easy to get sucked into a vortex of either somebody else's drama or somebody else's situation. And a really great way of doing this, another little technique, but it's called the triple A's. So I used it when I was really struggling with making some decisions, like getting out my own way. But one of them, the first thing is to accept whatever situation you're in. So the first A is what, and then you've got to sit there and go, what situation am I in? Is it a good one? Is it a bad one? We are very good at casting our opinions of others first before we get to know people. So we have to accept that situation. And have we put ourselves in it? Which I would pretty much say most of us have. So we accept first, and then a word that's very similar, but this is where for me language is really important. We have to acknowledge that situation. So acceptance and acknowledgement are two distinctive words for me. To accept it means that I have no control over it. I'm allowing that to sit in its own space. To acknowledge is then I have to take some control of what I can do about it. And that's really important. And then the final thing is, what am I going to do about it? What action am I going to take? So am I going to be kind and generous and positive, or am I going to sit there and be negative and down and actually take somebody else's energy away? So it's those things for me is, can I control the situation I'm in? If not, we have to have the strength to get up and leave. Do I acknowledge that I may have put myself in that situation or not? And again, elements of control, but control in that really nice, warm way, right? This is not control of demand. And then what action am I going to do? And sometimes we don't have to do any action, we're just recognizing it. And I think that in itself is really powerful.
Wow, those are all wonderful tools. Thank you for sharing. We have a saying here, when our faces look like that, we call it resting bitch face. Because if I don't consciously curl my mouth up, my mouth curls down. So I constantly look pissed off. So I have to, there's a few other people here who have the same.
It's something in society that we've created, and these are some some studies. When we talked right at the beginning, everything is a constant work in progress. I never say the word expert or anything, because if I do that, I feel like I've closed my mind up of other opportunities that I actually could change. And I think for me, it's being really conscious of, there's a brilliant statement by the Future Institute over in California. And when you walk in the building, it says, strong opinions lightly held. And I adore that so much. But it's that concept, right? Is that historically we've been told this is negative body, I'm crossing my arms, negative body language. And actually, if somebody's in a concentrated face, it's a certain thing, that person must be that. And it's about us evolving and understanding that, until somebody actually connects with us, then we can make choices and decisions. But prior to that, we've just got to be really careful. And I think it's just, we sit in lots of old ways, going back to the 70s, that's 50 years ago. It scares the living daylights out of me when we say that. But in the 70s, it's 50 years ago. Modern society has progressed massively. My youngest child is 23 this time. And one of the things that we were talking about is that I cannot compare my living and growing up with a job, family, children to that. And that's one generation. I can't compare because there's nothing for me to connect with because it's so different. Whereas I could do that with my own parents. We had a job for a lot longer. You had different styles of ways of connecting. And I think that's also what we've got to be really conscious of, is when we're talking about being positive, is there is not us sitting in the same space. We have to, sometimes physically get up and go and sit in a different space to see it differently. But I think it's, these conversations you could have forever, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And it's human evolution, right?
Yeah.
So the evolution of, where we are today and is very different than where we were. So we have to continue moving forward with the change of times and accept and grow and learn from it.
And it's not easy, right? That's the bit we've got to remember is, and I actually don't think it should be, because if it was easy, it means that we're not doing anything different. And I think that's the bit, change is a positive thing for me, a genuinely positive thing. Even if you come to my house, I'm constantly changing the rooms, the furniture. I shop my own house, the kids go mad, but I shop the own house and I move everything around, because for me, seeing things in a different perspective is something that allows us to really expand how we can be more positive, right? Because when we get stuck in that space, it's really hard. So you've got to pull yourself out, and it takes energy.
I love that. And most humans don't like change, but change is good. And as evolving humans, we need to change. And so I love that you do that and you force that change, just by simply moving things around in the house.
There's another thing here. I think this is really important. So what happens with change is we see it on a macro level. So we see change as this huge fundamental life shift. Crap happens in people's lives. So the bad stuff does happen. Just look at the world in its current state. But I think for me is when we can sit and see a micro thing that we can influence and we can actually help ourselves with. And I always say to somebody, if somebody says, I want to be healthier, Debbie, I want to get up and do a Peloton. I say, well, actually, that's not realistic. Why don't you start with, before you have your first coffee, have a lemon water? It's still a change, but we start with the micro to benefit the macro. And again, we're always in a rush. Everything's got to be instant. And the reality is it isn't. For anything to evolve, it takes time. And for us to be consistent with that, we've got to allow a long time. Think about shares, think about all the positive things that we can. It takes time. It's not instant.
And something that humans don't generally have today is patience.
Very true. Very true.
Debbie, what message or words of encouragement would you like to share with our listeners who aspire to make a positive difference in the world?
So I have a little mantra. And as I said to you before, language to me is really important. And I think if we can get ourselves into a space of treating people without labels, that's a massive thing for me. For somebody who loves language, somebody would think that I would like labels. And actually, I don't. I don't believe there's good and bad. I think everybody in some form, even the worst people in the world, have got something inside them that is of some element of human to human. And they'll make really bad decisions, or they get influenced, or really bad choices. But I think for me, that's the first thing, is please not to label people, because the minute you start to label, you rest bitching face, all that kind of stuff, you've literally made a decision already. So that's important. And then the other thing that I always say to everybody is think about what language you do use. And I say, I can, I will, I have, I shall, I do. And I think for me, it's really important. They're really positively triggering words. They are non-limiting, so I'm not putting any paradigms around them. But also, the very last one is I have, and I have enough. I'll always have enough. And I think there's a point of, even if I lost everything tomorrow, I would still have enough. And I think we get stuck in that. So I think for me is care for the humans as a human, irrespective of whatever predefined societal label has been given. And also be really proud of what you are doing in the moment, because it's powerful.
Thank you for sharing that. Debbie, if our listeners wanted to get in touch with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, I'm a lover of visuals, so you can go on to Insta. So Instagram is and.scot. Any of our socials is and.scot. So we're pretty easy to find like that. And also you can do that on LinkedIn, or you can type in my name and I'll pop up on LinkedIn as well, and I'll happily say hi.
I love it, Debbie. Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of these words of wisdom. I am so grateful for you. You continue to have a positive influence on me every time we have a conversation. I just love you. You are amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us today for another episode of Daily Influence. We hope you have an amazing day, and we hope this information that you got today got your day going with some daily positive influence. Have a great day. Bye.